When discussing why America seems to be openly supporting Pakistan against India, the first and most crucial point to understand is that geopolitics is not driven by emotion, morality, or friendships. It is entirely driven by interests. This is a reality that many people struggle to accept, especially when they look at international relationships through the lens of loyalty or historical gratitude. But in the real world of power, diplomacy, and survival, nations act in ways that best serve their strategic objectives, not emotional ties. To understand this fully, one must look at the foundation of international relations. No country gives aid, military support, or diplomatic backing without expecting something in return. This return may not be immediate or visible, but it is always calculated. America's relationship with Pakistan is no exception. The support, funding, and political engagement with Pakistan are not rooted in admiration or trust. It is a move grounded in calculated interest. America sees in Pakistan a location of high strategic value, a nuclear power bordering Afghanistan, Iran, and China, with influence in the Islamic world and deep military ties. All of these factors give Pakistan negotiating power, whether the West acknowledges it openly or not. Now, when people see America giving military equipment to Pakistan or inviting its leaders to summits, they quickly assume this is a sign of bias or support against India. But such conclusions are overly simplified. America's priority is not to take sides between Pakistan and India. Its primary goal is to maintain control in a region that is central to many of its global concerns: terrorism, trade routes, counterbalancing China, and nuclear stability. If America leans toward Pakistan at any given moment, it is not because it favors Pakistan morally, it's because it sees utility in doing so. Moreover, Pakistan has long understood how to present itself as a valuable ally. It plays the role of a frontline state in the war on terror, a gatekeeper to Afghanistan, and an influential voice in the Muslim world. This makes it a useful partner when it suits America's broader interests. For instance, during the Cold War, Pakistan served as a bridge between the US and China. During the war on terror, Pakistan provided logistical and intelligence support. In each case, the American-Pakistan relationship was driven not by shared values, but by mutual need and often mutual manipulation. Contrast this with India's rise. India, with its rapidly growing economy, rising tech sector, expanding military, and independent foreign policy, is emerging as a regional and global power in its own right. It does not depend on the United States for survival. In fact, India's closeness with Russia, its refusal to pick sides in Western Chinese conflicts, and its assertion of sovereignty sometimes put it at odds with American interests. So while America publicly praises India's democracy and economic strength, it is also quietly aware that a powerful, independent India could one day challenge American dominance, at least in the Asian hemisphere. This is why, paradoxically, the United States can be seen engaging more tactically with Pakistan at times, because it seeks to keep the balance of power unstable, especially in South Asia. A region in competition is easier to influence than one unified under a strong self-reliant power. Supporting Pakistan, even partially or temporarily, serves as a pressure valve on India's ambitions and sends an indirect message. You may be rising, but we still control the pieces on the board. You may be falling, but still control the pieces on the board. So, when analysts or ordinary people wonder why America isn't loyal to India despite their democratic similarities, the answer is simple. Loyalty is not a currency in global politics. Interest is. If the interest shifts, so does the support. Countries like Pakistan are not America's true allies. They are instruments. But then again, so is any country that allows itself to be used rather than choosing to lead. For the average citizen, this truth may feel uncomfortable, but it is empowering, because once you understand that relationships between nations are based on strategic self-interest, you no longer take offense, you no longer look for sympathy, you start thinking in terms of leverage. Nations that command respect are not those with the most friends, but those with the most value. The question is not, why is America supporting Pakistan? The real question is, what is America getting out of it? Once that is clear, everything else begins to make sense. In the complex geopolitical dynamics of South Asia, the roles of Pakistan and India are not equal in the eyes of global superpowers like the United States. They are distinctly different. Pakistan is often used as a strategic tool, while India is seen as a long-term challenger. Understanding this difference is essential to interpreting why certain alliances form and why apparent favoritism may sometimes emerge in international diplomacy. Pakistan, despite its internal challenges, holds a unique position geographically and militarily. It borders China, Iran, and Afghanistan, three nations that are significant to global security and trade. It has a deep military establishment that has over decades built strong intelligence networks, proxy connections, and influence in the Islamic world. Its status as a nuclear-armed country gives it an undeniable presence on the world stage. But more importantly, its dependence on foreign powers makes it pliable. This dependency on financial aid, military assistance, and diplomatic backing makes Pakistan a useful tool for powers like the United States. Over the decades, America has used Pakistan for different purposes, as a gateway to fight Soviet forces in Afghanistan, as a logistical base during the war on terror, and even as a pressure point on India during times of regional tension. In all of these roles, Pakistan was not a partner in the sense of being equal. It was a lever that America could pull to influence outcomes in the region. Whenever Pakistan aligned with American interests, it was supported. Whenever it drifted, it was sanctioned or sidelined. But the relationship remained intact because of the tactical utility Pakistan offered. On the other side, there is India, a growing economic power with a massive population, a rapidly expanding middle class, and a strong tradition of democracy and self-reliance. India does not take orders. It negotiates. It weighs its options. It refuses to be bound by Western expectations, especially when it comes to its relationships with countries like Russia and Iran. It continues to buy oil from whom it chooses. It maintains military and trade relations based on its own national interest. For a country like the United States, which is used to influencing decisions behind the scenes, this kind of independence can be unsettling. India is not just a rising power, it is a potential rival in the long term. Not militarily perhaps, but economically, politically, and even ideologically. While America talks about spreading democracy, India actually embodies it at scale and on its own terms. While the West tries to contain China's rise, India is doing so by increasing its influence in the Indo-Pacific region. And while the West relies on alliances to project power, India increasingly relies on its own internal strength. This independence makes India harder to control, harder to predict, and therefore in some ways more threatening than a country like Pakistan. When America appears to support Pakistan in ways that seem to undercut India, it is not necessarily out of preference for Pakistan. It is a strategic balancing act. By providing limited support to Pakistan, the US keeps India in check. It reminds India that it does not hold a monopoly over American attention. It subtly signals that America has other options in the region, even if those options are imperfect. This is not favoritism, it is classic geopolitical chess. There's another layer to this dynamic. India, by its very success, becomes a target of containment. Just as America seeks to contain China's influence, it watches India's rise with both admiration and caution. India's international, the more confident, self-reliant, and globally ambitious India becomes, the more likely it is to make decisions that do not align with American interests. Supporting Pakistan in symbolic or limited ways gives the US a bargaining chip, something to use when negotiations with India become difficult. Meanwhile, Pakistan, knowing its limitations, plays its cards well. It presents itself as the victim, the buffer, the frontline state. It appeals to Western guilt, to Muslim solidarity, to fear of instability. And this strategy works, at least partially, because Pakistan knows that even a small amount of instability in its borders can have massive regional consequences. This makes it a country that cannot be ignored, even if it cannot be fully trusted. So, in the grand scheme, the treatment of Pakistan as a tool and India as a challenger is not about preference, emotion, or cultural alignment. It's about a decision on issues that is based upon the preference, emotion, or cultural alignment. It is about leverage. The United States uses Pakistan when it needs to apply pressure or maintain balance, but it watches India, prepares for India, and sometimes even tries to slow India, because India represents a power that does not yield, a power that chooses its own path. This is not to suggest that either country is better or worse, but to emphasize the roles they play in the American strategic vision. Pakistan is engaged, India is calculated, Pakistan is managed, India is respected, but also watched. And in the world of power politics, being watched is not always a compliment. It is often a sign of potential competition. The alliance between India and Israel is not just a political convenience or a defense arrangement. It is rooted in something far deeper and far more enduring than transactional diplomacy. It is an alliance shaped by philosophy, by the shared experiences of two ancient civilizations that have faced exile, attack, division, and attempted erasure, and yet stood the test of time through inner strength, clarity of identity, and the refusal to surrender to external pressure. It is not only about exchanging weapons and technology, it is about exchanging principles, values, and a vision for survival in a world that often misunderstands them. Both India and Israel have learned the hard way that to survive in a hostile environment, one must develop not only tools of war, but also tools of wisdom. Their partnership isn't loud or boastful, but it is built on mutual respect and shared understanding. Babiaha Sabu, Al-Damita, Yesewella, Mufteye, Yesema Sabu. These are not nations that cry out for sympathy or validation. They focus on self-reliance, on building internal strength, on teaching their people the importance of remembering who they are, no matter how much the world tries to define them otherwise. When we speak of alliances, we often picture military exercises, joint air defense systems, intelligence sharing, and arms deals. While all of these are important, and certainly form a part of the India-Israel bond, the core of their cooperation lies elsewhere. It lies in a shared worldview that survival is not just about strength, but about clarity. Clarity of purpose, clarity of identity, clarity of mission. Israel is a small country geographically, but its influence and innovation far outweigh its size. Surrounded by nations that have often denied its right to exist, it has had to master the art of vigilance, resilience, and quick adaptation. It has had to rely on its brain power, its technological advancements, and its psychological edge. India, on the other hand, is a vast nation with an ancient civilization, but it too has faced fragmentation, colonization, terrorism, and attempts to divide its society from within and without. And that within itself, you might say to some degree, from within and without. In this crucible of challenge, both countries have emerged not bitter, but focused. That is why their alliance is philosophical. They understand each other not because of shared geography, but because of shared spirit. They both believe in the power of education. They both invest in innovation. They both cultivate inner strength, whether through meditation and Dharma in India, or through spiritual continuity and cultural memory in Israel. And most importantly, they both believe that identity is not something to be hidden, it is something to be strengthened, even when threatened. Reclaiming something like Poké requires more than just soldiers and missiles. It requires belief, national belief. It requires a vision that is not swayed by international pressure, media manipulation, or political convenience. Israel understands what it means to reclaim what was once lost. It understands the importance of returning to land, not just with weapons but with wisdom, not just to occupy but to restore. India, in its partnership with Israel, finds not only a strategic friend, but also a mirror that reflects what it too must embody: precision over passion, strategy over noise, and identity over approval. In a world where public opinion changes with the wind, these two countries remind each other that history is not written by the loudest, but by the most consistent. That reclaiming territory, dignity, or destiny is not something gifted, it is something earned. This alliance, then, is not a temporary handshake. It is a silent nod between two civilizations that know what it means to walk alone, to be misunderstood, to be targeted, and yet to survive, thrive, and rise again. It is a partnership built on the knowledge that sovereignty is not protected by force alone, but by the inner fire of a nation that knows who it is. The collaboration extends into sectors that build resilience: agriculture, cybersecurity, water conservation, artificial intelligence, space technology. These are not just industries, they are shields that protect a nation's future. Together, India and Israel work on making their nations smarter, more agile, and more self-sufficient, and through this, they build the capacity not only to defend what is theirs, but to reclaim what was taken. The world may see this as a military alliance. But that's only the surface. Underneath, it is the quiet coming together of two philosophies that believe in transformation through intention. In a time when alliances are often transformational, it inspires not just how nations defend, but how they endure, how they rebuild, and how they reclaim. Reclaiming land is never just a question of force, politics, or timing. It is first and foremost a question of consciousness. Before borders can be redrawn on maps, they must first be redrawn in the minds of people. This is the truth that often gets overlooked. The power to take action, to reclaim something that was lost or stolen, is not born in the battlefield. It is born in the mental discipline, clarity, and belief of those who seek to reclaim it. The battle for Poke is not just about strategy or alliances. It is a battle of awareness, a psychological war that must be won long before a single step is taken on physical ground. This is why victory always begins in the mind. A nation that is not mentally prepared, that is divided in thought, that is uncertain about its identity, can never carry out a mission as sensitive and significant as reclaiming Poke. So, when the latest reishi is used to be manipulated with every flavor, without unity of thought and clarity of vision, even the most powerful armies will falter. But when the people of a nation are aligned, when they believe without hesitation that something is theirs by history, by truth, and by justice, then their military does not fight alone. It fights with the strength of a collective consciousness behind it. This consciousness must be cultivated. It does not happen automatically. It requires deliberate effort across generations, through education, storytelling, historical memory, and cultural reaffirmation. A child growing up in India must not be told that Poke is a distant issue that only concerns politicians or soldiers. He must be told that it is a part of his identity, a part of his history, and a symbol of what happens when a nation is caught off guard or forced into compromise. He must understand, not with hatred but with clarity, why that land matters. Mental preparation also means emotional control. There will always be provocations, political setbacks, and moments where action feels delayed. But emotional reactions cannot dictate strategy. The mind must be trained to see beyond the moment, to understand timing, to choose the right window, and to act when the odds are optimal. This is why spiritual and philosophical foundations are essential. Nations like India, with ancient wisdom traditions, have the ability to draw from a deep well of inner calm and strategic thinking. They do not need to rush. They only need to prepare. Victory is not simply about overpowering the enemy. It is about outlasting them. Outlasting in thought, in patience, in focus. When a nation has its mind set, not in arrogance but in steady intention, then time becomes its ally. Every day becomes a step toward the goal, whether visible or invisible. This is the kind of mindset that wins long-term battles. Not noise, not outrage, but unshakable clarity. This is where the role of leadership, media, and institutions becomes critical. If the mental space of a nation is filled with distraction, division, and confusion, then no physical movement can succeed. But if that mental space is disciplined, inspired, and aware, then nothing can stop progress. The reclaiming of Poke therefore requires not just military exercises or international lobbying. It requires a complete shift in how the nation thinks, feels, and believes. This is not to say that force is not necessary, but force is only as effective as the intention behind it. A weapon in the hands of the unfocused is dangerous. A weapon in the hands of the prepared is transformative. When minds are aligned, when every citizen understands what is at stake, then even the smallest action carries the weight of national purpose. Every diplomatic move, every statement, every policy becomes a part of the mission, not in isolation, but in harmony with the greater goal. In today's world, wars are not fought only with guns. They are fought with narratives, with global perception, with soft power, and above all with unwavering will. This is why mental preparation is so crucial. The world needs to see a unified India, not only geographically but psychologically. An India that remembers, an India that believes, and an India that acts when the time is right. History has shown us time and again that those who win the war of the mind eventually win the war on the ground. The British ruled not with numbers, but by dominating the Indian psyche. Israel survived because its people never mentally gave up their right to exist. Likewise, India must never let go of the belief that Poke rightfully belongs to it. This belief must not come from anger but from knowledge, not from revenge, but from responsibility. When a nation becomes mentally ready, every obstacle becomes a test rather than a threat. Every delay becomes a preparation. And when the time comes to act, that action is not a gamble, it is a certainty. This is how great nations move, not impulsively but inevitably. The border will shift only after the mind has shifted, and once the mind is steady, the land follows. Always.